Hi everyone, and welcome to ELI on Air, the weekly ELI Talks interactive broadcast where we talk to interesting folks from across the Jewish spectrum about ideas of Jewish engagement, literacy, and identity. And my name is Miriam Brousseau. I am the program director for ELI Talks, and I'm really excited to be sitting down today with Jennifer Tzivia MacLeod, who is a children's book author who recently made Aliyah and wrote a book entitled Ezra's Aliyah. And also here with us right now is Esther Kay, who is our ELI Talks community manager. She's going to be keeping track of all of your questions and ideas. So if you have questions throughout the broadcast, please shoot them our way. You can send them in right through this video through Google+, and we will take those live on the air. Or you can share them via Twitter using hashtag ELI Talks. That's hashtag ELI Talks. And with that, Esther's going to disappear for the time being and be invisibly monitoring the conversation, so please send your questions her way, and in the meantime, we will just get started and jump right in with Tzivia. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much. I'm really, really excited about this.
Awesome. And you're coming at us live from Israel, which is really exciting. I think this is every once in a while we get someone from overseas, but it's really lovely to have you here to tell us your story. So you made Aliyah about a year ago or so, right? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We moved here. It's going to be 1 year next week. August 6th, we got off the plane at Ben Gurion Airport and disoriented. We did all our paper processing. It was about 3 hours at the airport, and then hopped in a great big taxi van and headed north 2 hours. We're just north of Haifa, and just a little bit east of the ocean, close to the beach.
Ah, very nice. And we were talking a little bit before the broadcast about the experiences that you'd had in Israel prior to making Aliyah. Could you tell us a little bit about that? It's kind of an exciting story.
Sure. So I was actually, well, Miriam had asked how long I'd been in Israel before deciding to make Aliyah. And the truth is that I was only here for 2 days. We were here for 2 days. I had to go back to Toronto for a family emergency. And it just felt like it was tearing my heart out of my body to leave this country. And so sometime a few months later, when things settled down, somehow my husband and I came to the same decision simultaneously without talking about it at all, that we were going to move to Israel, and that this was going to be, it was a 5-year plan. We came up with a 5-year plan to make Aliyah, which sounds great, but in our case a 5-year plan involves putting things off for 4 years and then scrambling for a year. So that's what we did. But before our pilot trip, I had been here literally for 2 days.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do and what you're up to now that you're living in Israel.
So I'm a writer. I guess that's the main thing. I'm a writer. I also work as an editor. It's less exciting, but sometimes brings in some money. And I write serious stuff. I write for magazines and newspapers. I write for the Canadian Jewish News, and I continue to do that. I cover all kinds of stuff that Canadians are doing in Israel, which is a lot of fun. And we had a big rally in Jerusalem last night. It was incredible. There was like 300 Canadians all being greeted by the mayor of Jerusalem. It was amazing. So I write. In my spare time, I write some more. I have a couple of blogs, and I also write children's books. Is that the question?
Great. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So we're talking today partially because you wrote a book entitled Ezra's Aliyah.
Right.
And so can you say just a little bit about the book and where the idea came from and who it's for?
Sure. So I wrote this book when we were thinking of making Aliyah, and we were in the middle of our 5-year plan. I wanted to talk to the kids about it. They knew that we were moving here, but they didn't know. The worst thing was that when we go to shul, when we go to any kind of a party or an event, everybody asks the kids, so are you excited? Are you excited about moving to Israel? And they don't know. They were 5 and 4 and 8 and 7. They had no clue what Israel was, how it was different from Toronto, whether they should be excited, whether they should be scared. So I wanted to read them something. There's books about traveling to Israel, but I couldn't find anything about making Aliyah, about picking up, leaving family behind, and the things that are strange and new about going to a new place as well. So I wrote it. It felt very natural because I write, and that's what I do. I write kids' books. I wanted to wait. This is the book. I decided to wait to publish it until we were here because I wanted to make sure that it really did kind of reflect the physical and emotional truths of the experience, which means that it was too late for my kids. But now it is out. It is available. It's available on Amazon.com, and I really hope that families who are thinking of Aliyah or know somebody who's made Aliyah will consider this as a resource that they can use with their kids.
Mm-hmm. So you said that people asked your children, "Are you excited about making Aliyah?" And that was maybe not the right question for them. Is there
Right.
Is there another question that you wish people had asked your children?
That's a good question. I never thought about that. I don't really know if there is anything because kids. This is the picture. These are the nosy strangers who are. I don't know if you can see it there. These are the nosy strangers who are kind of leaning forward and they're asking the kids. So are you excited? Is there a better question? I don't know because they're so powerless. They're so helpless in what's going on, and they don't really get a lot of say in what's going on. So is there a better question? Maybe just tell them you're going to miss them.
Yeah.
Or promise to come and visit. Tell them when you're going to get over for a visit, something like that.
Yeah, I imagine any kid would appreciate hearing that too. So what kinds of questions did your children have for you when you decided to make that move?
Beyond "Are you nuts?" We have 2 older kids. So our older kids are currently 19 and 18, and then we have 2 younger kids as well who are 6 and 9. The older kids. We realized right away that even though it was a 5-year plan, even though we started planning, we timed it for my daughter's high school graduation so that she would be kind of getting ready to spend a year in Israel, we hoped, and so she would come with us and maybe stay. But I realized that they were going to be adults and that was going to have to be their decision. With the younger kids, did they have any questions? I don't remember they're asking anything. We were homeschooling, so we did start learning about Israel and Israeli, basic geography, what are the cities called and what do the buses look like and stuff like that. I think maybe because we were homeschooling, we were just already having that dialogue, and the truth is they were so little when we decided that it was always part of their life and always the assumption that we would be in Israel.
So,
I don't know if that's
tell me a little bit about. No, it's great. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how your experience gets woven into the story in the book. And I mean, clearly everyone's experience of Aliyah is different and unique, and all of these things. So how did you balance those 2 things?
So 2 things that I put in here that are very personal are this one's hard for me to look at. This is where is she? That's the crying bubby.
Oh no!
And the bubby is staying behind, and she's close with the grandkids, and we lived a block away from my parents' house in Toronto. They were always with the kids, and that was probably the hardest. That was the hardest part about leaving. And I knew that that would be the hardest for the kids as well. So I put that in. Not everybody has that experience. For example, my husband lived 5 hours away from his family. They weren't as physically close, like a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
They weren't as physically close with the kids. And not every family is gonna, have to tear themselves away from a grandparent who is close. This is the other one that was our experience, and this is the, hold on, where is that? Can't get it in front of the camera. So this is the multinational Jewish kids, because we made Aliyah. When we made Aliyah, we lived in a Merkaz Klita, an absorption center, where immigrant families come from around the world, and you can live, depends where, there's a number of them all over the country, but you can live there for up to 6 months. So I wanted it to reflect the idea that Jews are coming from all over the place, Jews are all different colors, and you're going to meet people who don't speak English, and who speak Spanish, who speak Amharic, and we did, although the Merkaz Klita that we ended up in, it was 95% Ethiopian, and at one point my kids were the only white kids hanging out there. In the programs and stuff at the Merkaz Klita. So it was not quite as mixed racially as I had hoped it would be, because we were the minority there. But just the idea that sort of that setting, of being in the Merkaz Klita setting, not every family will have that experience. Some people go straight to an apartment.
Okay. And so what has the reaction been to the book? Who's reading it, and what are they saying? How are they using it in their journeys?
So I do hear from people. I hear from parents. I hear from a bunch of people who say, I wish that there was this when we were making Aliyah, because they feel like it's terrific. But the nicest thing is, one dad bought it maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, read it to his daughter, and he was like, I was a little bit nervous, because he was like, well, we'll see if it works. So they actually made Aliyah 3 weeks ago, and I don't know how we'll tell if the book worked. I'm not a psychologist, and I don't know how you'd measure that. But just that idea that they had this 4 or 5 months before they came, and they were able to open up that conversation and start talking with their daughter about that. I love hearing stuff like that. That's why I do it. I mean, with kids' books in general.
Absolutely. So, what have been what would you say are some of the sort of unique challenges or unique opportunities in making Aliyah specifically with children when you already have a family?
If I could, first of all, I think the best time to come is before you have kids, because this is a fantastic place to have babies and raise kids. But if you already have kids, it's not too late. I think people worry that they won't adjust. I'm hearing from parents that they're looking for special educational services, kids with special needs, kids with autism. So I think parents are concerned that their kids' needs won't be met, and there is that infrastructure here. It depends where you're living. You may have to choose a community based on whether or not there is that infrastructure. Parents are predominantly interested in schools. They're looking for schools, and they're looking for a social life for their kids. We met a family a few weeks ago, because we live up in the north, and there's not a lot of English speakers up here, and that's one of the trade-offs. It's beautiful. We have a beach nearby. It's a great place to live. We're 5 minutes from the train, so we can get around the country very easily. But there's not a lot of English speakers. If you speak Russian, you're set here. But otherwise, it's difficult sometimes finding friends for your kids. And we met a family who moved to Modin. Not to Modin. They moved to, I want to say Modin, but it's not Modin. I forget. Somewhere in the south, in the center of the country, and they did that specifically because they wanted their kids to have English-speaking friends. because that was the main thing driving their decision about where to make Aliyah, was their kids. So really, even the geography of where you end up in Israel could be based on whether or not you have kids. On the other hand, I've met people who came straight here and they're thrilled, and their kids learn Hebrew and they make friends, and it's not a problem. So, but I think that schools and finding English-speaking friends are the two main considerations. And work, I guess parents want to work as well. But that's all Olim. All prospective Olim also ask about, and it's harder working in the north as well. So that's a question for all prospective Olim. Parents generally put their kids first, and they say, what are the schools? Can the schools meet my kids' needs? And are my kids going to have friends?
And could you say a little bit more about the experience with language and any language barriers as it relates to your family? How are your children doing with all of that? Have they picked up some Hebrew? Are they what's happening on the language side of things?
So you may recall I mentioned the Merkaz Klita was 95% Ethiopian. So my son at the beginning of the year, and this is not what people think about when they think about language problems coming to Israel, he went to the kindergarten of the Merkaz Klita, he was the only white kid out of like 20, 30 kids in the class. He was the only child who was not from an Ethiopian Amharic-speaking family. And the ganenet, the kindergarten teacher, spoke to the kids in Hebrew. They sang in Hebrew. They read in Hebrew. And he picked up so little Hebrew. In the 6-7 months that he was at that kindergarten, he picked up hardly any Hebrew, because the minute the ganenet let them go and play, the kids are all running around and they're all speaking Amharic. And at his birthday in that gan, it's traditional here when kids have a birthday in gan. It's very cute. They go around the room and each kid sort of gives a blessing to the birthday kid that like they wish that he would like get married soon, and they wish, okay, he would find a good job, and the ganenet wished him like easy experience learning Hebrew, and one of the kids echoed her and he said, you should have an easy experience learning Amharic. But he picked up almost no Hebrew and no Amharic. So we switched him to another school halfway through the year, in January, when we moved out of the Merkaz Klita, and so that was January, and by Pesach he was speaking Hebrew. So it was like 3 months. So I know, like, because I've seen it, that they don't pick it up from the teachers. They pick it up from the kids. They pick it up hearing it in the schoolyard. He's still a little behind because of that. And the other thing with both the kids is we put them back a year in school so that they would have a year to get caught up. My daughter would have been going into 3rd grade in Canada, and so we put her into 2nd here. My son would have been going into 1st in Canada, and he did kindergarten here. It was fine. They'd also never been to school before, so. But my daughter, she was in a regular 2nd grade class. All the kids spoke Hebrew, and I would say by Hanukkah, she didn't need help in the classroom. Originally she had like someone translating for her, and by the end of the year she was bringing home tests with like 80, 90, 95%, like good marks, all on her own in Hebrew, in science, in Torah. Every parent I've spoken to, almost always, unless there's like a learning problem, then every parent is just amazed at how quickly their kids pick it up.
And are you learning your Hebrew from them now?
Sometimes. Yes, you know what? There's sometimes, because my vocabulary is not bad. My spoken Hebrew is lousy because most of my Hebrew comes from Tanakh and from Tefillah, which is not what is spoken on the streets of Israel. So my daughter will correct my pronunciation of things. I mostly know all the words, but she'll correct my pronunciation because my pronunciations are also very Ashkenaz and very North American, and whereas she's hearing what she's hearing from kids, it's far more authentic.
And to switch gears just a little bit, I mean, we're having this, for those of you who are watching us live, and we are still taking your questions. If you have anything to send in, feel free to shoot it your way, shoot it our way this through the video or on Twitter, #Eli Talks. So for those of us who are in this conversation live and perhaps shortly afterwards, it's a really difficult time in Israel right now. I mean, there's a war going on in Gaza, and in the meantime, there are still planes full of olim, full of immigrants arriving in Israel.
Right.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about. I mean, you made Aliyah a year ago, so what was going on in Israel then? And I'd love to hear any experiences that you've heard from fellow olim or others about this drive, I guess, to fulfill this dream regardless of the circumstances.
It's quite amazing. First of all, when we came, I sort of feel like it's actually been the quietest period in Israel's history. I don't know if there has been, up until 3-4 weeks ago, a period this peaceful, this calm. I mean, I know that there have been rockets coming in the south all along, but relatively speaking, we're sort of past the intifadas. It's been very, very quiet. There was a little bit, I think after we've been here for 2 weeks, there was some stuff going on with Syria, and it looked like they might attack Israel to retaliate, but it didn't happen. But we had to sort of rush and get the gas masks. That was one of the weird initiation rituals about moving here, is you have to schlep and get your gas masks, which might not be something that everybody thinks about. And then, of course, if you've got kids, you bring them home, and so the kids are like, what is that? It looks like a shoebox, but it's your gas mask. And they're all different sizes. There's like a baby one and a grown-up one and like a youth one. I think there's a couple of youth sizes, I'm not sure. So there was this panic, and I had to go and organize those very quickly. And I realized at that time that I hadn't had the conversation with my kids about the fact that Israel had enemies. It was a major omission. Not everybody loves Israel as much as we do. And so I kind of started thinking at that point about how to talk to them about it, and we did tell them what the gas masks were. I probably should have, I don't know, how do you want them not to be alarmed, but you want them to know that things could happen. So balancing that is a really tricky thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You'd also asked about olim coming now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just amazed. I'm amazed and impressed. And actually, the person, one of the people who emailed me that he'd read his book, it was the one that I mentioned earlier, read his book with his daughter, ended up, I think they're somewhere in the south, and he ended up writing an article about what it was like to come in the middle of like all the alarms and the sirens and whatnot, and that experience of making Aliyah during that time period. I'm just so impressed that people are continuing to come, but I understand it because it's a dream, and we're going to get through this. And I have met in the last week, I've seen, heard in person the mayors of Jerusalem, Sderot, Beersheba, and they're all saying, we're going to get through this, we're strong, we're not shutting down, we got to just keep bringing in people, keep things as normal as possible, and that includes Aliyah. Mm-hmm. Should I answer this question, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a question about presumably, unfortunately, the circumstances kind of dictate that at some point many Israelis are spending time in a shelter, and so what is that like for you as a parent, and what is that like for the children?
I'm gonna hide my face in shame or gratitude. We have not had any sirens up here at all. There were some rockets that were making it as far north as Zichron Yaakov, rumored to be coming as far north as Haifa. We're actually north of Haifa, and so it was not good during the Lebanon war. I'm not saying this is the safest place in the country because we're very close to the northern border, and they're also not always friendly. But during this particular crisis, it's been very, very quiet here. which is good because we live in an older neighborhood where the buildings don't have shelters. Currently, every apartment must have its own shelter room, a mamad, a safe room. Before that, the law was that every building had to have a shelter. And before that, the law was that every community had to have a shelter. So we live in an older community where there is one shelter, which is, it's a few minutes away across a parking lot and past the pizza shop and down and around the corner, and we couldn't get there if there was a crisis, essentially. So up here we haven't had it, but I know people who are going through it. I know people who've been getting up, 2 times a night and like schlepping their kids. Often they have a mamad, a safe room in their house that they can go to. I heard from one family that they just put the kids to sleep in the mamad at night. And it's usually like the parents' bedroom or some, a safe room in the house. Just put the kids to sleep in there, and then everyone joins them if there's a siren. But I know somebody in Rehovot. So it's kind of close to Tel Aviv, and they're in an older building, so there's a shelter for the building. She has a newborn. And they just moved into the building. It's a great way to meet your neighbors because she's down there and having to pick up her newborn and having to run down the stairs, maybe sometimes a few times a day. So it hasn't happened to us. The one siren, I've only experienced one siren, was in Beersheba, and we were actually in the mayor's war room at the time. So the siren went off and they said, don't go anywhere. This is the safest place in the city. Because I was with a mission. I was with a UJA mission. So, and when those missions are coming to Israel, it's quite incredible. But they whisk them from like safe room to safe room to safe room. So they're never out in the open. So thank God it's been very quiet.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I would love to just hear a couple of things. First of all, what's something that you wish you'd known going into this that maybe you found out later, and what would you like others to know about, especially making Aliyah with a family with children that they maybe don't know or wouldn't expect?
What, I'm still stuck on the first question. I nodded like I had an answer. So I think a piece of advice that people told us, somebody from Nefesh B'Nefesh, I believe, and I don't remember who, told us this. When you're in North America and you're a parent, you're the person in charge. You're like the big boss of your family. And making Aliyah knocks you off balance. It just... It throws you for a loop in every way, and you do not feel like a competent adult. I spent 5 months in Ulpan, so you're learning the language. It's like you're talking at a kindergarten level. All of a sudden, you're not a competent adult. In Toronto, if we needed something, let's say just something mundane, like the electricity wasn't working. So you call up the electric company, right, or the phone, or you need to get your internet set up. So you just call and you do it, or you go into a store and you buy things, whatever you need. And here it's just nothing is that simple. And so trying to maintain your hold on adulthood, which is kind of slipping out of your grasp at every opportunity, and still being an authority for your children, I have found myself saying, I don't know, more times in the last year. You have to have the humility to say that, to say, I have no idea. I don't know how long we're going to be sitting in this office. I don't know why we're sitting in this office. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know what the next step is. and yes, so you feel like a child, but you still have to be an authority for your kids. That's been weird. Somebody warned us about it, which was good, and so I guess I should pass that on. That I don't know what the takeaway is, but that's a tough thing to do. I think your kids will still respect you as long as you say, I don't know, and also to try to keep things as normal as possible. We even brought some of our books that we were in the middle of so that we could start reading them in Toronto and finish reading them reading them here. Just like our chapter books that we sit down and read every night. I made sure that I knew exactly where those were. And of course, they each packed their own suitcase. They each got to choose which things were going to go on the boat, which things were going to go on the plane. They got a little bit mixed up about that, and we had to straighten them out because they were, like, anyway, it's expensive to take things on the plane and cheap to send things on the boat. So we had to kind of sort it out a little bit. But, yeah, so those are two things, but very important things.
So
should I?
So I think in closing we've got one other question. Tell us a story about the moment you knew with every fiber of your being that this was the right decision for you and your family.
Oh my gosh, there have been so many that it's not even possible to name specifics. I think anytime something Jewish happens, it's very real here. Where we were living, this was very early on Yom Kippur, it was not a religious city. Now we're in a religious community, but before we were in a non-religious community, and on Shabbat things don't close down. Everybody goes to the beach. It's very secular. But on Yom Kippur, everything ground to a halt. Every store was closed. Every bus was stopped. And blessedly, the sun went down, and it was very dark and cool, which was nice because it was still, Yom Kippur was very early last year, and it was still very hot weather during the days. And everybody came out en masse in this secular town, because secular in Israel does not mean what it means outside of Israel. Everyone came out en masse. Everybody was just parading up and down the street, friends, families. It was feeling the joy of Yom Kippur. I mean, it's such a blah day. For me, it's always been a blah day outside of Israel when everybody else is like doing their thing and I have this serious thing that I have to do. Just seeing everybody participating and sharing the joy of the holiday, because it's a holiday. It's such a terrific, fantastic spiritual occasion. Was amazing. And having my kids with me and like, look, everybody is celebrating Yom Kippur. It's not just our thing. It's this country's thing, and we are here in the right place. There have been about 1,000 of those moments. That was Yom Kippur, but there was Yom HaAtzmaut, when parades were going past our window. There was Purim, when everybody is dressed up. This is the only place in the world to be a Jew. I loved being a Jew outside of Israel for a very long time. But here, it's just so much more. It's 3D. It's everybody around you all kind of in sync. It's great.
Well, I'm thrilled. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the fact that I can share that with my kids is something that I have always wanted, and it's what we dreamed of. It's cheesy to say it, but it is what we always dreamed of, giving them this Jewish life.
It's amazing. I'm thrilled to hear that you've had 1,000 of those moments, and I wish you thousands more. And thank you so much for being with us here today and for sharing your story, and for Ezra's Aliyah, which everyone can check out on Amazon and all that good stuff. So, so thank you so much to Tzivia for joining us here today. Thank you to Esther, who is now back on the scene, for grabbing all of your questions and monitoring that conversation. ELI on Air happens every week, so we'll see you again next time with another guest and more inspired Jewish ideas. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next time on air. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.